Okay.
Greetings, humans of the internet. Welcome once again to Bowtie Talks. I, of course, am your excellent host, Luke Johnson, coming to you as usual from our undisclosed location, Midwest USA. And if you remember from last week, I interviewed the official historian of Rankin Bass Productions, Mr. Rick Goldschmidt, and I'm happy to say he's back again. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Well, if I remember correctly, when we left off, we were discussing Mad Monster Party,
Oh yeah,
which I
that's
think
one of my
was,
favorites.
oh yes, mine too. And what's amazing to me to think about, besides, we've talked about that they used water in some scenes, is that the cast was only made up of four people.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Um, Alan Swift was a great voice talent, so he was able to basically mimic a lot of the actors, like Peter Lorre, and I
Jimmy
guess he
Stewart.
used Jimmy Stewart for Felix, right? And
Yes, and
it's
Peter
good
Lorre
that
for
they,
for Yetch. Peter
right?
Lorre for Yetch. Yes.
It's good that they got Boris Karloff, though, the real Boris Karloff, because a lot of voice actors impersonated Boris over the years, and Phyllis Diller was a great talent,
Oh,
and she loved being a part of the movie because she got to sing in it. Uh, she didn't do too much singing in her films, so she really enjoyed it. But I love the Jack Davis designs. That's what primarily got me interested in doing my first book to begin with, because I love the art of Jack Davis, and Mad Monster Party was a real triumph for him because he was famous for drawing a lot of um, monster comic books like Tales of the Crypt, and he used monsters in a lot of different things. Like he did album covers, some real famous monster album covers, and you know he drew a lot of monster art before he ever did design Mad Monster Party. So Mad Monster Party was kind of a culmination of all of that. And I thought he did a really good job with all the monsters.
oh, he definitely did. And there was one thing that, in regards to the art design, there were some designs, one in particular, that I'm surprised he was able to get past the censors.
The Dracula?
No, the secretary.
Oh, Francesca?
Yes, her.
Yeah, that's the way he always drew women in even in ads and movie posters and so forth. And I think another reason why she's designed the way she is because Harvey Kurtzman was involved with Mad Monster Party. He came in later to punch up the script, but he was also known for Little Annie Fanny, which was
Oh,
a
yes.
running comic strip in Playboy, which Jack Davis did a few of those. And even Frank Frazetta did some art for Little Annie Fanny. And he was the artist that they used for the movie poster art for Mad Monster Party. So it kind of all makes sense. And the fact that the movie was called Mad Monster Party was sort of a parody of Mad
Yes.
magazine. And Harvey Kurtzman started Mad Magazine, and he had already left by the time they did this movie. So I think that was sort of maybe a shot at Bill Gaines, who was continuing the Mad magazine. I'm not sure, but I think he was the reason that they put Mad in the title.
Yes, and you actually brought up an interesting point in the in the documentary that you did because you said that you thought that the Count of Sesame Street resembled the Count Dracula in Mad Monster Party.
Right.
And
And
quite frankly,
I
I see
talked,
it.
yeah, and I talked to a friend of Jim Henson's, and he said that um, when he did the count, he was conscious of Mad Monster Party and Jack Davis's design. Jack Davis drew Dracula that way in just about everything that he did. He always put a monocle on him, and there's a few other things that he did with the character. His head shape is um, kind of weird. It's almost like a pear head shape. And Jim Henson definitely was inspired by Jack Davis for the count.
It definitely shows. It definitely shows.
Yep,
But I can't help but wonder if maybe they gave the Count a goat. If he Jim Henson gave the Count a little goatee to cut to avoid copyright infringement.
maybe so.
It makes
Yeah,
sense. And they
yeah,
colored the Count purple, whereas Count Dracula in the Mad Monster Party movie was green.
right.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm sure he saw, if it wasn't the movie Mad Monster Party, he saw some Jack Davis artwork that inspired that. He did a famous monster cover for RCA. I think it's called Monster Rally, and Dracula is leading like a monster orchestra, and that Dracula looks a lot like the one that's in Mad Monster Party. So um, I'm sure he saw something that inspired him.
Yes, and you also talked about how you love the score of it, which I do as well because it's a jazz score,
Right.
which was
It's not like any of the other Rankin Bass soundtracks. Um, Maury Laws said he was sort of um, the style of it was sort of taken from the Bond movies, and you can tell that with the theme. It sounds like Goldfinger, and the jazz is very, very different than all the other things that they did.
yeah, because
Uh,
yeah, I got a point with that because yeah, most of the songs were kind of like Broadway show tunes. I always thought that's
yeah, they
something else.
were,
And I
and they were
think
all
that I'm sorry, what were you
they were
saying?
they were kind of happy, upbeat things. Where Mad Monster Party is has a lot of upbeat, up tempo songs, but they're different. They're
Hmm.
definitely different sounding than the rest of the scores that they did for the other holiday specials.
Yes, and I think that there was some false advertising done in the credits because I noticed that it said soundtrack available through RCA Records.
Right.
That was a lie, wasn't it?
Yeah, it ended up getting shelved. And in fact, I was the first person to ask Maury about it. And I think right before my book came out, I asked him about that and I asked him, can I get a copy of it? And he sent it to me on cassette. And eventually I got it put out on CD. And Maury and Jules were involved with it, which was kind of nice that it finally saw the light of day. It's out of print now. There was a vinyl um, album finally put out, but one of the sides of the vinyl had not the greatest transfer. And I don't know, I didn't work with the company that did the vinyl, but the CD soundtrack turned out the best. And we were glad to finally get that out.
Yes, and if you don't mind, I would like to backtrack a bit because I think it's time we should probably start talking about the holiday specials. And one
Sure.
thing that fascinated me was the like with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, how green they were because that was, I think, really their first big production.
Right, right. Well, they had Return to Oz premiere in February of 1964, and I think they thought that was going to be a much bigger um, presentation than Rudolph, because back then they were showing the regular MGM Wizard of Oz yearly on CBS, and it got big ratings, and no one really attempted sort of a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, and Return to Oz was sort of that. Um, Rankin Bass did a series called Tales of the Wizard of Oz in the early 1960s, which was a syndicated series. And this was the first primetime um, special that dealt with the Wizard of Oz. It was somewhat successful, and GE promoted irons. And if you mailed away for it, you could get a charm bracelet with the Wizard of Oz characters, the Rankin Bass Wizard of Oz characters. So when Rudolph aired, um, they didn't know how it would be received. It was intended to only last for 2 years to promote the General Electric houseware products. And it obviously was a big success. And now it's 61 years this year.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And not too many, I don't know what the ratings are like now with network television because most people are streaming or watching it on other channels. They
Mhm.
show it on Freeform
Yes.
too. So it moved from CBS though to NBC last year, and it originally premiered on NBC and was on NBC through 1971, and then it moved to CBS for all these years, and then it went back to NBC. Last year, they put it in a um, 75 minute time slot, and people were expecting, some kind of special content. But what they did was they showed about 100 commercials in that time slot. They did show the whole special. The only thing they didn't show was the original ending, which was different. It had an elf throwing the packages off with the credits on the packages. Um, but they did show the peppermint mine sequence, and they didn't cut anything out. So I guess that was good.
That was good. And what's fascinating, one thing I found interesting was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that might have been the only special for which Maury Laws and Jules Bass did not do the soundtrack because they got the original songwriter, Johnny Marks.
Yeah, they did. But Maury Laws, it was actually the first time that Maury Laws was the musical
Oh,
conductor. And even though Johnny Marks wrote the songs, Maury gave it that Rankin Bass sound, which was very important because
yes.
it had, very, very, holiday accents and bouncy feel to it that no other composer really was as successful as Maury to create holiday music like that. I would call it sophisticated holiday music.
Oh, yes,
It's not
yes.
it's not really written for strictly children. It like you said, it had a Broadway feel to it. And I know, though, Maury did not enjoy working with Johnny Marks, and they worked on the Ballad of Smokey the Bear in 1966. That was also on the NBC um, General Electric Fantasy Hour. But um, when Maury worked with him on Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, um, it was with the exception that that would be the last time that he would have to work with Johnny Marks,
Hmm.
because I guess he didn't get along with them too well.
Well, I think I did actually read somewhere that Johnny Marks was difficult.
Yeah,
Sounds like it
I know
was.
he had some problems over the years, so I don't know the whole story. I never read a book on him, but
Huh. Yeah, but I don't think anyone's ever been written.
yeah, yeah. I just know what Maureen told me, and he just didn't see eye to eye with Johnny. But Jules Bass wrote the lyrics for all of the other specials, and
Yes.
uh, the combination of Maury Laws and Jules Bass was excellent. And it started with The Daydreamer, and it went all the way till the end of Rankin Bass Productions. So um, they loved working together. And Jules wasn't all that easy to work with either. He was more of a introvert, and he he somewhat resented Arthur Rankin, because Arthur started the company when they were Videocraft International.
Hmm.
So it was Rankin Bass, and Arthur was the CEO. He was the one that chose the projects and made sure that they got done. And Jules sort of resented Arthur, and whoever Arthur was friends with, Jules wasn't. He he was kind of strange in that way. If you were friends with Arthur, then he would resent that. And I sort of saw that towards the end of Jules's life with me, because I was always closest with Arthur. Um, but I think that's because Arthur was the main guy at Rankin Bass, and um, Jules wanted to be the main guy.
Probably why Arthur Rankin's name came first in the production company.
Right. And Arthur was just a really great guy, but he was also a very business-like, you know. It was always his way or no way kind of thing. Um, so he was very, very driven, and also independent too. So it would be hard to be a business partner with Arthur. And he was also a workaholic. Um, he never really wanted to retire. He continued to try to get productions launched, and even towards the end of his life, he wanted to do a stage play of Santa Baby, which was their last special that they did for Fox in I think it was 2001. Um, it wasn't as good as the classic Rankin Bass specials, because it got watered down and it went through many, many hands instead of just the crew that worked on everything. And it suffered because of that, and it wasn't nowhere near as good as, any of the classic Rankin Bass specials. So He wanted
Yeah.
to do a stage play, but it never happened.
Well, well, I guess it is what it is. And yeah, with everything I've read about Arthur Rankin and the Jules Bass didn't really surprise me though, because it sounds as if to me they kind of balanced each other out.
Yeah, and they didn't work directly together on a lot of things. Jules would work with the East Coast actors, and of course, on the music with Maury. And Arthur would be busy. A lot of times, Arthur would fly to Japan and somewhat oversee what was being done with the animation. Jules never went to Japan. And sometimes Arthur would go to the West Coast to work with the Hollywood people that wouldn't be traveling to New York. So he would go to them and rent a studio and work with them in the studio. So they they worked on different parts of the productions. They didn't necessarily work side by side.
Well, maybe it's for the better that way, because yeah, it sounds like if they did work side by side, they might, get in each other's way and such.
Right, right,
But yeah, and you mentioned the Daydreamer, and I've been doing some research, and I think that might have been the first animated feature, stop motion or otherwise, to boast an all-star cast.
right. That cast was star-studded. Yeah,
I
and
mean, yeah,
Joseph E. Levine, who was the executive producer, he thought that was going to be a huge, huge hit. And it looked like with that kind of a cast, you would think it would be. Um, they even had Ray Bolger and Margaret Hamilton from The Wizard of Oz. Um, Boris Karloff, Burl
Patty
Ives,
Duke.
right? Paul O'Keefe, Haley Mills. So he was expecting big things from the Daydreamer, and he was sort of disappointed with it. And that was the second movie in a three-movie deal. And the third movie was Mad Monster Party, which was the best of the three. And he kind of gave up on Rankin Bass. So that's why Mad Monster Party wasn't released in a bigger way than it was. It was kind of snuck out over a 3 year period. 67, 68, and 69. And it primarily was in children's matinees. Now, Arthur knew that it was a much better movie than the way it was released. So in the early 70s, he recut the movie into a 60-minute television special, and they were going to have Vincent Price host it as himself in puppet form. But they ended up not doing that. Instead, they did the ABC Saturday Superstar movie, Mad, Mad, Mad Monsters, um, which is a neat 1 hour cell animated special that has all the monsters in it. Um, I kind of like it. It's not as good as Mad Monster Party, but it's still a good special. And I would have loved to have seen though Mad Monster Party become, a holiday Halloween annual Animagic special.
Hope so would
I
I.
I think that would have worked really well.
Oh, it definitely would have. Definitely would have. I mean, I'm surprised it didn't go into Halloween specials with that, and it's
Right.
kind of find it sad they didn't.
Yeah. But Mad Monster Party kind of fits that role. I always watch it on Halloween, and
It has
I
definitely
mean
became a
it's
tradition with me.
Yeah, it's just fun to have on, when
Hmm.
you're handing out candy.
Hmm.
It's one of those movies. It's very much like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein,
Yes.
which I also watch on Halloween. It's it has that same, it's a monster mash movie that's funny and also family oriented too.
Yes,
And
yes,
the
and yes, it's definitely became a Halloween tradition for me from now on. Every Halloween, I've decided to watch it.
and Umbrella from Australia company put out a new Blu-ray that's loaded with extras, and there's even an Easter egg on it. And it was something that I really wanted to get out on Blu-ray, and it was Tad Moshinaga who did the animation for Mad Monster Party, took the King Kong character, and put him in a Japanese television show called Princess Comet. And it was sort of a guest star. And he appears with live action people and he's animated and he appears in this television special much more than he did in the movie. He has much more screen time and it's pretty funny too. And we put a Spanish dubbed version of the Japanese television show on the Blu-ray as an Easter egg. So it's kind of fun to watch that too, with the movie. And I
Right.
did the commentary on the Umbrella release. I also did the commentary on the Daydreamer Blu-ray that was issued by Scorpion Kino Lorber, and that was fun because there's so much to talk about with the Daydreamer. In fact, I even wrote half of my book on Santa Claus is Coming to Town is about the Daydreamer because we had so much material on it, that we did a half a book on it. Um, so
Well,
that was kind of fun.
yeah. I haven't seen it yet, but I'd like to soon.
The Daydreamer?
No, I have not seen it yet, but I'd like to soon.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange movie in that Hans Christian Andersen, Chris, the main character,
Hmm.
he he kind of, I don't know, he moves from one story to the other and kind of lets down the characters that he meets. And it's a little bit depressing, but if you look at it in terms of each story, um, there's some neat stories in there. In particular, The Little Mermaid is well done. And also, I like the part with Boris Karloff where he plays the rat with Setsua Hayakawa as the mole. And there's a song that they do in that's similar to Mad Monster Party because there's bats and um, insects and all these things in the mole's cave. And that's a really neat segment of the movie. I guess the movie as a whole could have been better, but if you look at each segment of it, some of the segments are better than others. You know, I
Okay,
would
so it's one of
say
those.
some
Yeah.
parts are might even be the best, considered some of the best scenes that they ever did. You know, it's just as a whole, it's not. I wouldn't say it was a four-star movie, um, maybe like a three. It's not their best, but it's good.
Well, even a more obscure, I think, would probably be Willie McBean and his flying machine, magic machine, because that's one that I've been able to find next to nothing on.
Yeah. Now that I have a good copy on DVD, and I love it because it was simultaneously made with Rudolph. So it has most of the same voice actors, and it also has Tony Peters' designs. He designed Rudolph, and he kept everything real simple. So the characters don't have too much detail to them, you know? I
Yes,
think later on, when Paul Coker started doing the design work, the characters changed quite a bit. They weren't as simple. And I like the simplicity of Rudolph, and Willie McBean has that same look to it. And Willie McBean has a pretty good story too, because they keep going back into time. It's sort of like Sherman and Peabody from
mm-hmm.
Rocky and Bullwinkle. And there's been
Yes.
other shows that time travel shows like that. Um, but it's a good movie. It was their first movie too.
That was their first
Um,
feature.
right. And they use for the music in that one the same team that wrote the songs for Return to Oz, Pharrell, Thomas, and Pollock. And they only worked with them on the Return to Oz and Willie McBean and his Magic Machine, and that was it. So I don't know whatever happened to them, but the songs are pretty good. You know, they're not
Yes.
Bass and Laws good, but they're pretty good.
And we're gonna have to jump forward a bit because my father really wants me to talk about my and his favorite special, which is Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Oh yeah.
And
And
that
that
one in
one,
particular, I think, has some of what I think may be some of the best songs that Jules Bass and Maury Laws wrote together.
right. That's when they hit their peak. 1970 and 1971 with the one right after it, Here Comes Peter Cottontail. I don't think there's a bad song in either one of those two.
So I guess you
And
could say they put one foot in front of the other.
right. And I think they would translate over to Broadway perfectly because
That
they're so well written.
that one in particular, yes, I could see that one being a full budget Broadway musical.
Yeah.
And there was a story that I saw Arthur Rankin said in about that involving Fred Astaire and Paul Frees
Oh,
about when.
yeah.
Yeah, you want to tell it or should I?
Well, Arthur just made a joke about the fact that um, when Paul, when Fred was in the studio and Paul came in, he was more impressed with Fred's agent, Shep Fields, who did a novelty act where he blew bubbles in a drinking like a champagne glass,
Yes,
and um, he completely ignored Fred Astaire as a joke, but obviously he knew Fred Astaire was a legend at the time,
yes,
and they brought Fred Astaire back for the Easter Bunny is coming to town in 1977. Um, so Fred must have liked being a part of Santa Claus is coming to town. And it really, the way they would get these big stars to host the shows is they would tell him this is something that you'll reach a whole new audience. You know, your grandchildren will be able to watch this and get a lot out of it. And that's true. Um, Many people will remember Fred Astaire from Santa Claus is Coming to Town and not know much about his other work that he did, in the movies and the dancing. So it really did introduce him to a whole new audience. And not too long ago, we found Fred Astaire did a record for Santa Claus is Coming to Town where it was an off-air radio record where um, a radio station could ask him a question and then he answers it.
Hmm.
Um, and it was kind of interesting some of the things he said about Animagic and his involvement with it. Um, but I think he really appreciated doing it. And Mickey Rooney originally didn't want to do Santa Claus is Coming to Town. His agent had to talk him into it. And he told a friend of mine that he's so glad that he listened to his agent because many, many people, that's what they remembered him from. When he would meet people, signing autographs, they would want something signed from Santa Claus is Coming to Town. It was just such a big deal for most people. And, that's what most people will remember him for.
He must have enjoyed doing it because he came back like Fred Astaire did for the Easter Bunny thing, but he came back for The Year Without a Santa Claus.
Right. And then also Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, which was a feature film in 1979 that they recut into a 90-minute television special. I think when they put it in the theater, it was in the summer for Christmas in July, and it didn't do that well in the summer. So they recut it into a Christmas special, and it did better on television.
Well, Mr. Goldschmidt, it looks like we're going to about have to wrap up here soon, but I do have one more question because for the life of me, I can
Sure.
never figure this out with regards to Frosty the Snowman. What is an otherwise perfectly normal looking baby doll, a girl doll, doing on the island of misfit toys?
Oh, well, the real answer is I had three versions of the script from Romeo Muller, and he didn't put in the script what was wrong with the Misfit doll. When they recut it in 1965, they added in the scene with the campfire when Santa goes back and gets the Misfit toys. And the Misfit doll is in that scene too and has a line, and she becomes more of a significant character. But Arthur always joked that she was clinically depressed because she was cast off by her mistress and they didn't have Prozac in the 60s. But I think it's more of the fact that Romeo really didn't attribute handicaps to all of the characters. And in fact, when they reshot the end,
Once again, I can only do 40 minutes. But I emailed Mr. Goldschmidt and he said that Romeo Muller never said why that dolly was on the island of misfit toys. But there you have it. Basically, her problems were more psychological. And that brings a closing to my two-part interview series with Mr. Goldschmidt. Goodbye and God bless. And remember, if you want to change, it's as simple as putting one foot in front of the other.